Okay. Hi, I'm Miss Hedgebeth. I'm Mrs. Rose, student teacher. You can call me Miss H. That's fine. Today we're going to continue reading, so be it. And I'm actually going to read to you chapter 10. So I'm going to go ahead and start. So the title of the chapter is Go. I got to the bus station with plenty of time to spare. I had planned to use the time to do what Bernie and I had agreed on. Scout around for a woman sitting near my departure gate who I could get on the bus with. Once I got there, though, for some reason, that didn't feel right. There were plenty of women around, all shapes and colors and sizes, and a lot of them looked pretty friendly. But instead of picking one out, I found a seat on an empty bench and sat down. I sat there for almost 45 minutes with my suitcase clamped between my knees, waiting. I don't know how to explain it. It was just a feeling I had that the right person would come along and find me instead of the other way around. About 15 minutes before my bus was due to leave, a woman in a long green raincoat came and sat down beside me. She had a little soft-sided suitcase with netting on the ends. Inside were 5 kittens, all different colors and patterns. They were meowing up a storm, so she was clicking her tongue and whispering them to be quiet. They're scared is all, poor babies. It's the first time they've been away from their mamas, she told me. Her name was Alice Walensky, and she was on her way to a big family reunion in Salt Lake City. She was bringing the kittens along to give them away to some of her cousins. Since she already had 3 cats at home, including the mama cat, Bibi, we started talking about cats, and I told her about Cookie Dough and Clara Barton. And before I knew it, they announced our bus, and we got on together, just as easy as that. The first hour I was on the bus, Alice kept up a steady stream of chatter while I kept eyeing the box that Bernie had given me. I wanted to know what was inside. I didn't want to open it in front of Alice, though in case it was something embarrassing. Finally, nature called and she made her way to the rear of the bus to use the bathroom. I quickly untied the yarn and opened the box. Inside was the red sweater, the one I'd found wadded up in the back of the closet. Bernie had washed and blocked it and carefully mended all the moth holes with matching red yarn. I'd had no idea she'd been working on it. She must have been doing it in her room at night after I'd gone to sleep. I slipped the sweater over my head and double rolled the sleeves up. It was much too long for me, but I didn't care. It was perfect, soft and warm and smelling wonderfully of home. Home. I didn't dare let myself think about it. I was afraid that if I did, the hollow feeling that had taken hold in my stomach earlier would take over the rest of my insides and turn me wrong side out. To keep my mind off things, I got out my notebook and started a new list. Things I have never seen before. Cows. Seats with footrests. Roadkill. Number 1, dead deer. Number 2, dead raccoon. Number 3, dead skunk. Number 4, mystery fur. Alice came back from the bathroom, and for a change, she didn't seem to feel like talking. Instead, she put her footrest and pushed her seat back as far as it would go so she could nap. I wasn't tired yet, so I sat there working on my list for a while longer. I added 3 more things. Toll booths, someone changing a flat tire, hitchhikers. The kittens were asleep in their bag tucked under Alice's seat, but after a while, one of them woke up and began to cry. I got down and crouched between the seats, peering through the net at its tiny face. Don't worry, I whispered. We'll be there soon. We made our first stop at about 7 o'clock that night in Fernley, Nevada. Alice didn't wake up, so I climbed over her, got off by myself, and called Bernie, collecting according to plan. She cried when she heard my voice. I thanked her over and over for the sweater and quickly told her about the bus and about Alice and the kittens and everything else I could squeeze into our brief conversation. We'd agreed beforehand to set Bernie's egg timer each time I called to keep the calls down to 5 minutes. That way the bill wouldn't mount up too high. She told me what she and Mama had been doing. We dusted today, Heidi. You know how your Mama loves dusting. Mama and Bernadette would always tickle each other with the feather dusters, so it was more of a game than a household chore. Although, I never noticed any dust around, so I guess it accomplished more than just entertaining Mama. How's her head? I asked. She lay down for a couple of hours this afternoon after you left, she said. And she's been fine since then. Are you okay? I've been so worried. Bernie had put the map up in the kitchen next to the phone, and she stuck it in the first pushpin, a blue one on Farnley. The timer dinged, just as they announced my bus. "Call me from your next stop," Bernie said. "That'll be Lovelock. It's going to be pretty late," I said. "I'll be up," she told me. Bernie had given me $50 before I left. It was all she could spare. I had the bills, which she had washed, of course, in my backpack. We knew that the cab to Hilltop would be $15 each way, so that meant I had only $20 extra to buy food or anything else I might need along the way. Bernie was afraid that it wouldn't be enough, but I wasn't worried. If I needed money, I was sure I could find a way to get some. I was hungry, but I didn't want to waste money on the food in the bus station. So when I got back on the bus, I ate one of the ham sandwiches Bernie had packed, and afterward a package of Xander's chocolate devil dogs. The food stopped my stomach from growling, but I still had that uncomfortable, hollow feeling deep down inside. Alice woke up from her nap refreshed and feeling talkative again. She was more of a teller than an asker, but I didn't mind. Her chatter helped keep my mind off other things. She talked on and on into the night about the reunion in Salt Lake. One way or another, 52 Walensky's were making their way there. Her clan, she called them. Some, she explained, she got along with famously, and the others she could have done without. When she started talking about the feud she was having with her sister Ellen over who had given better Christmas presents the year before, I got sleepy. In fact, I fell so sound asleep, I slept right through the stop in Lovelock. It was the first time in my life Bernie and I hadn't said goodnight to each other. I slept straight through till the next morning. When I woke up, my neck was stiff and the kittens were making a pitiful racket under the seat. Alice put her finger to her lips, and then making sure the driver didn't see me, she took them out of the bag one by one, handing 2 of them to me to hide under my sweater, where they settled right down. "Do you have a big family, Heidi?" Alice asked me. I waited without answering. I learned that Alice had a way of asking questions that she didn't really mean for you to answer. Besides, I didn't feel like telling Alice about my family. Listening to her go on and on about the ins and outs of her own family had begun to make me feel even more acutely aware of all the things I didn't know about mine. Alice looked at me expectantly. Apparently, this time she did want an answer. "There's Mama and Berna and me," I said, "and I've got a Grammy too." It felt strangely exciting to come right out and say I had a grandmother. Like that, even though I didn't know it yet for sure, Alice didn't question it though. Why would she? 52 Walensky's were gathering in Salt Lake City. It probably seemed only fair for me to have one measly grandmother. "My Grammy gave me this sweater as a going-away present," I added boldly. When I'd lied to Bernie about going to buy my ticket, I had felt guilty the whole time. This was different, easy, and I didn't feel guilty, more like giddy. Alice didn't know me. I could tell her anything I wanted to about me or my family, and she wouldn't know if I was making it up or not. "My Grammy lives with us, and she gives me presents all the time," I said. "Hundreds of them." "Mine taught me how to make a pie," Alice said, turning the conversation away from me and back to herself. "The secret is in the lard. People turn their noses up at lard these days, but it's the only way to guarantee a flaky crust. Tell you what, Heidi," she said as she got up and carefully pulled a shopping bag down from the overhead baggage compartment. "I was going to bring this to reunion, but Lord knows with all the jouncing around, it'll be the worse for wear by the time I get there. How would you like to sample my strawberry rhubarb right here and now?" She pulled an aluminum pie tin out of the bag. Who says pie is not for breakfast? I was hungry, and I had never tasted homemade pie in my life. Bernadette wasn't a baker. She wasn't a fryer or a boiler either. She made decent scrambled eggs, but other than that, and coffee and Jell-O, I don't remember her making anything from scratch. We ate mostly frozen or canned things heated up. Alice's pie had little strips of dough woven like a basket across the top, and the edges were pinched up in a perfect, even little waves all the way around. It was beautiful. My grandmother was in the 4-H. She explained as she watched me lift a forkful of pie into my mouth. She won ribbons for her pies, and she passed on all her secrets to me because I'm her favorite grandchild. I didn't know the first thing about baking pies, but for reasons I couldn't understand, all of a sudden, those secrets Alice's grandmother had passed on to her made me so jealous it hurt. "My Grammy bakes too," I said. "She's the best baker in the world. But she doesn't bake pies, just cakes. The kinds with lots of layers, with frosting in between and pink roses on top. We're big cake eaters in my family, all of us." As I talked, I ate pie. bite after bite, unable to stop myself, just like the line. Cake, cake, cake. That's all anybody ever thinks about at my house, I said through a mouthful of pie. Alice watched as I bull-weevilled my way through the whole pie. When I finally pressed my fork down on the last bite in the bottom of the tin pie plate, she smiled and said proudly, "Did you ever taste a flakier crust, Heidi?" I shook my head and licked the fork clean. I felt sick. The kittens under my sweater had grown restless, and their little claws were catching at the stitches in my sweater as they squirmed, so I took them out and put them back in the bag. Alice had a thermos of milk with her. She poured some in a little dish and put it in the bag for them. I was thirsty and wished she would offer me some too, but she brought it for the kittens, so I kept quiet. "When's your birthday?" Alice asked me once she had resettled in her seat. This time, she didn't wait for an answer. "Mine's October 2nd, she said. Then, ticking off on her fingers, she continued. "My mother's is October 10th, my sister's is the 13th, my brother's is the 18th, and Daddy's is the 27th. We're all 5 of us October Walensky's." October Walensky's. I felt another jealous pang. I looked at Alice and wondered, would she understand if I told her about my birthday? Did she know anyone else who had to guess about when they were born? How can an October Walensky possibly understand about that? "Who named you, Alice?" I asked, and braced myself for another pang because I was sure she would know. "It's a Walensky tradition," she began. "The name Alice has been in the family for generations. There are scads of us. My grandmother and my great-grandmother on my father's side were Alice's. And there are 2 uncles who married Alice's. And gosh, there must be at least 3 other Alice's I can't think of right now." The thought of all those Walenskys running around happily naming their babies after each other made me antsy, and again I felt driven to bend the truth like a soft twig. "I was named after the movie," I told her. "The one with Shirley Temple in it?" "Really? Oh, I love Shirley Temple," Alice said, clasping her hands together with delight. "All those wonderful curls and that cute little pout. I'm a big fan." "My Grammy knows her," I went on, trying my best to make it sound like that was no big deal. Just one of the many interesting things about me. "She knows Shirley Temple? You mean personally?" Alice asked. My chest swelled with pride. I was discovering something else about lying. When people believe what you say, sometimes you forget you're not telling the truth. "Shirley Temple's the one who taught my Grammy how to bake cakes." "She's a very good baker," I said. Alice looked at me for a minute. "The Shirley Temple we're talking about? The movie star? She taught your grandma how to bake?" she said. I nodded. "She comes over and bakes at our house all the time," I said. "Shirley Temple comes to your house?" Alice said. "Yes. She says she likes our oven better than hers," I said. "I see," Alice said, nodding and pulling a loose thread on her sleeve. "You must have a very nice oven at your house." "Yep," I said. "Shirley Temple comes over all the time to use it, and after she and my Grammy bakes cakes, they decorate them and stick candles in them, and then we all sit around together and pretend it's somebody's birthday." "And she comes over to do this pretty often, does she? Bake cake in your oven?" asked Alice. "Very often," I said. "All the time, really. Except, of course, when she's busy in Hollywood making movies." "Of course," she said. "Tell me something, Heidi. When Shirley Temple comes over to bake with your Grammy, does she ever tap dance for you? Show you the steps she's working on for her next movie, maybe?" "Sometimes she does," I said. "Sometimes she dances." "In your kitchen?" asked Alice. "Or in the living room," I said. "And does she sing sometimes too?" Alice asked. "Sometimes," I told her, "if she's in the mood." Alice laughed. Then she looked down at her lap and didn't say anything for a minute, and I knew something was wrong. "Heidi," she finally said, "like I told you, I'm a big Shirley Temple fan. I think I've seen every one of her movies at least a dozen times, which is why I happen to know that she hasn't made a new one since A Kiss for Corliss back in the late 1940s. She's an old lady now, almost 80 years old, into politics, a staunch Republican. She doesn't tap dance in your kitchen any more than I do." "Oh," I said, or tried to anyway. My lips could only manage to form around the sad roundness of the word. No sound actually came out. Now I understood. She'd known all along that I was lying, about the dancing and the singing and the baking, about everything. She listened to me and kept going, just the way I did with Xander, nodding and unhugging and egging me on, all the while knowing that I was making it up. Why had she done that? Why hadn't she told me she knew I was lying? Maybe for the same reason I didn't tell Xander. She was more interested in trying to figure out for herself what lay underneath the lies. But I wasn't like Xander. I wasn't lying because the truth was too hard to admit. I wasn't hiding the truth. If that's what she wanted, I would just give it to her. I don't have a birthday, I said, and my mama's got a bum brain, and I'm not sure if I have a Grammy or not. She didn't say anything. Bernie says it's like Mama and I dropped from the sky, I told her. Alice nodded and brushed a cat hair from her skirt, but she didn't ask me to explain. She was an October Walensky. She had a grandmother who shared her name and told her secrets and loved her best of all. She didn't need to know the truth about me. She didn't even want to. The air between us was thick and uncomfortable to breathe after that. Alice read magazines, licking her fingertip each time she turned the page. The kittens cried, but she didn't offer to let me hold them. When we finally reached Salt Lake City, Alice tucked the magazines back in her bag, put on lipstick, and combed her hair. "You take good care now, Heidi," she said, as she slipped into her long green raincoat. When she come and sat down next to me in the Reno bus station wearing that coat, I felt as though I'd been found. But as she stepped off the bus and I heard the kittens meowing and Alice clicking her tongue to comfort them, I was sure that I had never felt more lost in my life. And that is the end of chapter 10.